Part 25. Global Copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 241. Hearing the conversation between the two, Lu Zhaoqi trembled and felt dull. Knowing that Zhang Li would not take action again, he had no choice but to disengage from his fighting stance, move forward with a smile, and exclaimed, "Sister, Zhang Li's move is so powerful." As he spoke and gestured, he asked curiously, "How did you accumulate all your strength?" In fact, what he said went a bit too far. The two only met once and directly inquired about other people's secrets. If it were anyone else, he would have given up on him a long time ago. But Zhang Li didn't know how. She looked at Xiao Yan and then replied, "You practice the moves you have learned tens of thousands of times every day, day after day, year after year. It will take about 10 years of hard work to reach my current level." Oh! Lu Zhaoqi immediately lost interest upon hearing this. After all, most of his strength can be obtained with just a tap of his fingers. Let him practice hard for 10 years. With this skill, he can transcend the tribulation and ascend. All I can say is that people change. Lu Zhaoqi, who worked hard through sweat before, has indeed expanded a lot after winning the golden finger. Zhang Li was not surprised to see his lack of interest. There are many people who are curious about why she is so strong, and there are also many people who know how she became strong. But over the years, there are only a few people who can persevere like her. It takes 10 years to sharpen a sword. It's easy to say, but after you do it for 10 days and a half, you will understand the meaning behind this sentence. Humph. Why are you so pretentious? Lu Yun curled his lips and muttered, "Our boss will be here soon and he will make you look good." When Lu Zhaoqi heard her words, she raised her eyebrows. Just as she was about to speak, she suddenly turned to the other side and looked up. A magical bird is coming in this direction. This divine bird has a glow all over its body, a golden crown on its head, flowing clouds on its shoulders, a phoenix feather on its tail, and 3 red feathers on its 3 legs. It looks like a colorful phoenix. At first glance, it looks very noble. And the divine bird carries people on its back. Far away, before anyone arrived, a gentle voice came over. "Hey, this is quite lively. Are we not late?" It was Xianuan who spoke. She had a leisurely expression and a gentle tone. She seemed not surprised at all by the presence of so many people on the field. "I think so, as a prophecy leader." The current scene was probably within her expectation. She didn't come alone. Along with her was Xiao Yan's captain Min Dongmei. The two of them stood on top of the divine bird, their clothes fluttering like gods. Lu Zhaoqi took a closer look and saw that besides the two people, there were 2 others lying on the back of the divine bird, seemingly in a coma. It was Lu Zhaoqi's 2 remaining teammates, Lin Qingqing and Lu Yang. Obviously, the 2 sides should have encountered each other. After a few rounds, the 2 were no longer hostile to each other and were knocked unconscious. Lu Yun was overjoyed when he saw this. He quickly waved to his captain and shouted, "Captain! Come and help me teach this brat a lesson. He is so arrogant." Lu Zhaoqi looked strange. "Very good. If you can't beat him, just shake him. You'd rather just be the top laner and call him father, right?" The divine bird landed and turned into a streak of colorful light that entered the dual plate in Min Dongmei's hand. Xianuan waved his sleeves, and the invisible force dragged the 2 people who were still unconscious and followed Min Dongmei, walking towards Lu Zhaoqi and others. When Lu Yun saw Min Dongmei, it was as if he had found someone to rely on. He immediately jumped more than 3 feet high. He excitedly pointed at Lu Zhaoqi and said, "Boss, help me beat him. He bullies me." There was a hint of coquettishness in her words, as if a little girl who hadn't grown up was complaining in front of her adults. Lu Zhaoqi ignored her, but turned to Xianuan and said, "Sister Nuan, how are they?" Xiaonuan had a faint smile on her face, and she looked very elegant and calm. She said softly, "Don't worry, they are all fine. They just ran out of power and fell into a coma." Xiao Yan also walked up to her best friend, smiled and complained, "Why did you come here? You are too slow." Xiaonuan glanced at Lu Xiaoqi thoughtfully, shook her head slightly and said, "No. We came just in time." Just in time. Lu Xiaoqi was a little frightened by her gaze. Not only that, but after hearing her words, a picture emerged in her mind. "Sorry, maybe I came at the wrong time." "No, you came just in time." Lu Xiaoqi suddenly shook off the strange thoughts in her mind, feeling a little confused. "Oops, so I hate these riddlers the most. He is garrulous and talks weird things. People who are harmed always think blindly." "Hey," Zhang Yang sighed, "it seems that this training is over. All 5 of them have already fought against each other. It is undeniable that the strength of Xiao Yan and her team is crushing to Lu Xiaoqi's teammates. Even the weakest Xiao Yan can suppress Zhang Yang, the strongest among the 4 of them, excluding Lu Xiaoqi. The only turning point is Lu Xiaoqi. His current record is 3 wins from 3 fights. Needless to say, his teammates were basically defeated. This training is actually a comprehensive confrontation. The test is who of the 2 players can be the first to find their teammates and eliminate the other team's players. In the face of crushing strength, according to normal logic, the only way for Lu Xiaoqi's team to win is to assemble the 5 people in advance and defeat the opponents one by one. Now, although 3 people on the other side have been eliminated by Lu Xiaoqi, the remaining 2 have successfully reunited. But Lu Xiaoqi is the only one left on his side. Although Zhang Yang and Li Leiban did not lose in a strict sense. It's just that both of them have a clear understanding of their own position. In a battle of this intensity, they are nothing more than cannon fodder. It doesn't even have the effect of delaying and obstructing the other party. Therefore, the outcome of the 2 sides is destined to be determined by the battle between Lu Xiaoqi and the remaining 2 opponents. Thinking of this, Zhang Yang, who was still worried at first, was suddenly stunned. "Wait, something seems wrong? It seems that the other party invited us to train us. Why do I think about the current situation with the mentality of wanting to win?" His expression gradually became complicated, and his eyes stayed on Lu Xiaoqi. Lu Xiaoqi felt uncomfortable looking at him and couldn't help but ask in a low voice, "What are you looking at me for?" Zhang Yang shook his head and said seriously, "It's up to you to perform." This tone and attitude made it look like Lu Xiaoqi was taking the lead and obeying orders. Global copy, My talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 242. Zhang Yang was originally a proud man of heaven. Although he was not said to be invincible in the world, he really had never conquered anyone among his peers. During the previous training, he was not unaware of Lu Xiaoqi's power. Although he admired Lu Xiaoqi's methods, he definitely could not be called an admirer. Because they all know that Lu Xiaoqi's strength is actually obtained in exchange for his potential for future development. Only today, facing this group of adventurers at the peak level of Yuehui, Lu Xiaoqi was still able to attack forcefully and counter-attack brazenly. It even gave him the illusion that he could compete with the opponent. Only then did he wake up. It turns out that Lu Xiaoqi is really strong. Lu Xiaoqi has always been leading everyone. If a person is only a little better than you, you may still have the idea of catching up. But if he is an existence that is beyond your reach, then naturally you can only express your admiration with exclamation. After thinking about this publicity, he naturally expressed his surrender to Lu Xiaoqi. Lu Xiaoqi blinked, looked at Xiaonuan, and asked, "Sister Nuan, do you still want to fight?" Although it was a question, the tone was affirmative. For no other reason than Lu Xiaoqi simply wanted to see what the remaining 2 people could do. The previous 3 people all brought him quite a surprise. Whether it was Xiao Yan's fighting spirit, Lu Yun's power of earth, wind, water, and fire, or Zhang Li's infinite superimposed attack power, it all opened Lu Xiaoqi's eyes. He really wanted to see what kind of different experiences Xiaonuan and Min Dongmei could bring him. It's a pity that after hearing his question, Xiaonuan slowly shook her head with a faint smile on her face and said to him, "I'll forget it. My abilities are not suitable for fighting, so I won't fight with you. It's a competition." Lu Xiaoqi had a little regret in her eyes, but she still nodded and turned her gaze to Min Dongmei. To be honest, he was quite looking forward to Min Dongmei's methods. After all, the dueling disc on her arm was enough to make him ready to move. Min Dongmei did not shy away from his war-filled gaze. She looked at Lu Xiaoqi with piercing eyes, nodded, and said loudly, "You can fight if you want, but it's not convenient here. Come with me," he said and flew out first. Inconvenient. Is this because he is afraid of affecting the onlookers? Lu Xiaoqi glanced at Li Laban and Zhang Yang and thought in her mind. Just as he was about to keep up with Min Dongmei, he heard Xiao Yan suddenly shout, "Be careful! Our boss is a very powerful alchemist. What she is best at is making powerful monsters into cards, awakening them through summoning, and using them for her." Lu Xiaoqi. "Sister Yan, I guess you can't hide your identity as a second-year-old boy, so you can figure it out yourself." Min Dongmei didn't fly very fast, and Lu Xiaoqi quickly caught up with her. The two of them stayed in mid-air. Min Dongmei's eyes were full of fighting spirit, and the expression on her face was eager to try. She looked at Lu Xiaoqi, her red lips parted slightly, and suddenly said, "Do you know? I've wanted to compete with you a long time ago." "Mr. Lu." Lu Xiaoqi was shocked and her eyelids couldn't help but twitch. "Mr. Lu. It's been a long time since I last called this title. Only Yuehui adventurers who experienced the monster siege in Chengdu would call him Mr. Lu." Later, the official gave him a hush-hush order, prohibiting others from spreading his identity, and the turmoil gradually subsided. To this day, he has not heard this title again for several months. It seems that Min Dongmei has decided on something. Lu Xiaoqi was also a little surprised. In fact, Xiao Yan should have realized it a long time ago. It's just that she has been deceiving herself and others and doesn't want to believe it. In comparison, after hearing her description, it was normal for Min Dongmei to immediately connect the two identities of Lu Xiaoqi and Mr. Lu. Seeing the confident expression on her face, Lu Xiaoqi didn't say anything more and said as if in acquiescence, "Then let's get started." Min Dongmei's tone seemed a little dissatisfied. So he stood there and watched calmly as Min Dongmei slowly recruited her monster army bit by bit. Sphinx, Anubis, the winged serpent, Medusa, Hydra, three-headed Cerberus, Unicorn, Kirin. With his strength, it would only take a matter of minutes to end the battle. But seeing him letting himself go all out and summoning monsters, there was still an unpleasant feeling in his heart. Because he knows that these are all fake. The best way to deal with such adventurers is for big words. The reason why he hid it was because he didn't want others to disturb his normal life. He didn't just hide it for the sake of hiding it. Mr. Lu. So confident. The same instant kills won't let him learn anything. I seem to be underestimated. Min Dongmei pressed her left hand on the dual plate in her right hand, the fluorescence flickered, and a huge monster silhouette slowly took shape behind her. And looking at Min Dongmei's attitude, even denying it is useless. But such a fight was meaningless to him. With Lu Xiaoqi's start, when they roared and rushed forward, the powerful power on their bodies was truly extraordinary. Thinking of this, Min Dongmei's expressionless face turned even colder than frost, and she waved her hand. After all, he has exposed a lot of tricks and cannot withstand careful scrutiny. Lu Xiaoqi had already learned from Xiao Yan that Min Dongmei's ability was actually an alchemy similar to Lu Yang's. If he wants to learn more combat skills and enrich his combat experience, he must fight against different adventurers. What he is best at is the human sea tactics, using a massive amount of props to consume the opponent to death. It's just a knockoff made by Min Dongmei using cards. But Lu Xiaoqi did not rush forward immediately. The atmosphere between the two became tense instantly, and the momentum of both parties suddenly increased. The difference between the two is that Lu Yang makes robots, while Min Dongmei makes various monster cards. They all seem to be monsters from various myths and legends. Lu Xiaoqi was also amazed when she saw it. These monster cards made by Min Dongmei are not unfamiliar to Lu Xiaoqi. Groups of monsters rushed towards Lu Xiaoqi. But no matter how extraordinary it was, it only shocked Lu Xiaoqi. All props are made through alchemy, and when necessary, they can be summoned to fight. Capture the thief first and capture the king. Even if he knew that Lu Xiaoqi had the strength to quell the monster siege on his own. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 243. People from both teams are waiting for the result of the final contest. Only Xiao Yan is different. She was being scolded. The one who scolded her was Lu Yun, who had a look of hatred on his face. Different from the slightly anxious expressions of others, Xianuan looked particularly leisurely. She calmly took out a mat and put it on the ground. Shiren sat on it. In a blink of an eye, there was a tea set and a cup of steaming tea on the grass. Xianuan held the teacup contentedly, as if she didn't care much about the final result. Or maybe, she already knew something in advance. Zhang Yang crossed his arms and looked at the sky, frowning slightly, as if he was thinking about something. Li Laban guarded the two people who were still in a coma, and he was also a little dazed. In fact, he was a little bit shocked. A battle with Zhang Li made him deeply realize his own shortcomings and how big the gap was between him and the top experts. Although he could not be said to have relied solely on his natural ability in the past, but after excluding the blessings of his natural ability, let alone the elite level, he may not even be able to reach the threshold of Takyo University. The powerful natural ability indeed greatly improved his strength, but it also made him lose himself and became unclear about his own position. This battle with Zhang Li severely woke up this genius ranger adventurer. Let him know that relying too much on his own talents will inevitably lead to his failure to become a cutting-edge powerhouse. It also let him know that his natural abilities still have limits and are not as unsolvable as he imagined. If Lu Xiaoqi used a large-scale AoE to force him to reveal his figure before, he was still a little unconvinced. But this time Zhang Li didn't rely on any props or even use skills. He cracked his innate ability just by relying on his amazing observation ability. He really had no excuse for his failure. Ahem. Just when he was in a daze, Lu Yang coughed sharply and woke up. Li Laban hurriedly stepped forward to check, and then realized with a strange expression that this guy seemed to have choked on his own saliva. The unlucky Lu Yang opened his eyes were dull. It took him a while to recover, and he looked at Li Laban beside him and asked, "Where is this? Is training over?" As soon as he finished speaking, the surrounding colors seemed to be erased by a huge piece of eraser. Everyone left the barrier and returned to reality. Zhang Yang stood behind the two of them and said with a heavy expression, "It looks like it's over." Everyone stood on the stage. Only then did everyone realize that Lu Xiaoqi was only a few steps away from them. Lu Yun's eyes lit up and he ran to Min Dongmei's side happily, saying happily, "How is it? Boss, did you win? Did you teach that brat a lesson for me?" Min Dongmei's cold face could not clearly see the emotions, anger, sorrow, and joy, and she said in a calm tone, "I lost." "Lost, I knew how this brat could win." Lu Yun reacted suddenly after saying this, and couldn't help but stare at his watery peach blossom eyes. What? Lost? She took 2 steps back and said in disbelief, how is that possible? Isn't this impossible? The waves behind the Yangtze River push the waves ahead. Talents emerge from generation to generation. The captain is not invincible, so he will naturally lose. Xiaonuan had already finished packing her tea sets at some point, walked over with a smile on her face, and spoke softly. Xiao Yan glanced at Min Dongmei, then at Lu Zhaoqi, and opened her mouth, but for a moment she didn't know what to say. It was she who begged her captain to agree to train. Lu Zhaoqi also showed a shy smile and said modestly, Sister Dongmei is indeed very strong. I'm just lucky and slightly better. But Lu Zhaoqi didn't want to remain in the stalemate. Because, among these people, the one who faced Min Dongmei's power was Lin Qingqing, who was in a coma. Each monster contains part of the power of the rules. Zhang Yang, Li Leiban, and others were stunned when they heard Min Dongmei personally admitting defeat. But tacit agreement does not mean that you are willing to be slapped in the face. The two have been entangled for a long time. For Min Dongmei, as long as she has the card, money, there is no problem of consumption, while Lu Zhaoqi's recovery ability is equal to consumption, and there is no worry of being drained of mana. If it's just a monster, it's really nothing, but Min Dongmei summons hundreds of them. Min Dongmei is indeed very strong. Although the monsters she summoned have no consciousness or even their original bodies, they all retain some of their original power. Lu Yun looked at Lu Zhaoqi and saw that although his eyebrows were lowered and he looked modest, his expression was indifferent and showed no lucky look. How embarrassing it would be to tell it. The overwhelming posture did cause Lu Zhaoqi a lot of trouble. His original intention was to see Min Dongmei's methods, but now that he had seen enough, it was natural to stop. He is clearly complacent. This sword can break all laws. They all knew that Lu Zhaoqi was very strong, but they didn't expect that he could be so strong. This is not entirely modest on his part. The two of them combined, exhausted, could not do anything to the other party. So after he accelerated and got rid of a few clingy real goblins, he took a deep breath and swung his sword towards the monsters in the sky. Among them, Lu Yang was the one who felt the deepest feelings. This Moonlight Peak level team was crossed by an 18-year-old boy. Look at the look of surprise on Lu Zhaoqi's face. A mere incomplete set of rules would not even qualify Lu Zhaoqi to scratch an itch, but with hundreds of rules mixed together, even Lu Zhaoqi had to be cautious. What matters is the momentum. As a result, as soon as the training started, his team was almost picked over by Lu Zhaoqi. Although everyone knows that this person is nominally a team member who helps Taijing University train for the adventurer competition, but in fact it is Xiao Yan who wants to meet a certain boy named Lu. How can I have the nerve to train them? For example, the petrification of Medusa, the regeneration of Hydra, the sacred power of the feathered serpent, the evil destruction of the unicorn. Theoretically speaking, two people can keep fighting like this for 3 days and 3 nights. Seeing his face, Lu Yun felt his teeth itching. He was extremely unhappy and had no place to vent, so he just let out a muffled groan and turned his head away from him. Even she herself never expected this result. Although it is not a direct 1-on-4, but a different kind of will battle, the opponent is a strong man at the peak of Yuexi. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 244. Director who stepped onto the stage. There was something strange about his expression. As the person who opened the barrier, the performance of everyone in the barrier cannot be concealed from his perception. He had imagined Lu Zhaoqi's combat prowess as high as possible, but he had never expected that his combat prowess would be so outrageous. No wonder Dean Wang would appoint this freshman to participate in this adventurer competition. It turns out she already knew. Etc. Mr. Lu? Why does this title sound familiar? He seemed to have heard it somewhere, but for a while he couldn't remember it. He could only suppress the circulating thoughts in his mind, walked to Lin Ching, who was still lying on the ground unconscious, and coughed lightly. "Why are you still lying down and pretending to be dead? The battle is over and you still can't get up." Hearing this, Lin Ching had no expression on her face. She stood up from the ground and dusted herself off, acting very naturally. But Li Laban and Lu Yang on the side looked surprised, and even Zhang Yang couldn't help but ask, "When did you wake up?" "When Lu Yang coughs," Lin Ching replied lightly. Lu Xiaoqi glanced at her but said nothing. In fact, she woke up earlier. When Lu Xiaoqi saw her, she was already awake. Maybe it was because the girl was thin-skinned and felt a little ashamed of losing to the opponent, so she deliberately pretended not to wake up. Breathing when a person is asleep and breathing when awake are completely different. When sleeping, breathing will become longer, but when awake, it will not be like this unless you do it deliberately. Not only Lu Xiaoqi, but also Min Dongmei and Xianuan knew this. Neither of them said it out loud. Naturally, Lu Xiaoqi wouldn't say anything. After all, he promised Director Hu. As long as Lin Ching doesn't take the initiative to cause trouble for him, he will not provoke the other party. When Lin Ching said this, she glanced at Lu Xiaoqi involuntarily. In fact, what she was thinking was much more complicated than what Lu Xiaoqi had guessed. On the way to meet everyone, she woke up. But they just happened to hear Min Dongmei and Xianuan discussing Lu Xiaoqi. Xianuan asked Min Dongmei, "Are you confident about fighting against Lu Xiaoqi?" Min Dongmei was silent for a moment, then asked, "Didn't you already see the results?" Xianuan smiled and said, "I only see you, I can't see him." Min Dongmei sighed, "What did you see?" Xianuan said, "Out of 100 possibilities, you seem to have lost 99 times, and the only victory seems not to have been won." "Well, if you're right, he should have taken the initiative to admit defeat." After a moment of silence, Min Dongmei just said lightly, "The future that is seen is no longer the future. Not to mention you said it." Xianuan smiled and did not refute. She knew that this was because her proud captain didn't want to admit that she would lose so miserably. The two looked at each other speechlessly. Although she only heard a few words, Lin Ching felt greatly shocked inside, and her breathing became a little faster. Not long ago, she and Lu Yang tried their best, but they couldn't resist the monsters Min Dongmei summoned at will. This has already hit her hard. In addition, his energy was exhausted, so he fell into a coma. And as soon as she woke up, she heard that the strong man who crushed her was said to be unable to defeat Lu Xiaoqi. Can you believe it? Lin Ching didn't want to believe it. But, what if? Suppose, just in case, Lu Xiaoqi could really beat this woman. So, what should I do? Lin Ching felt a little complicated. She had always made trouble for Lu Xiaoqi before, and she was always very angry with him. Then now she discovered that the guy she had always looked down on was actually the hidden giant in their team. She didn't know how to face this scene, so she might as well just keep pretending to be unconscious. Anyway, as long as I'm in a coma, I don't know anything. Except for herself, no one else knew about her self-deceptive ostrich mentality and didn't ask any questions. Director Hu is now a little confused by Lu Xiaoqi. The boss he invited to train his competitive team actually knew Lu Xiaoqi. This was beyond Director Hu's expectation. What's even more outrageous is that Lu Xiaoqi wore 4 clothes during training. You're still training at her? Go directly to the battlefield. The current situation is that the opponent has lost this sparring match, and it is estimated that it will be difficult to continue the rest of today's training. Not to mention today, there is no way of knowing whether future training will be shelved due to the incident. After all, he is also an adventurer at the peak of UXZ. Don't you want to lose face? As for myself, except for Lu Xiaoqi, No one has any intention to train. On the one hand, it was hit by Min Dongmei's adventurer team, and more importantly, it was a double blow by Lu Xiaoqi's super strength. And it's still a critical hit. This was no longer a case of Galen breaking his defense by whispering and being silent. This is Galen using the endless green cross cannon and the power of the wind. As soon as he sprinted away, he was hit by a strong wind. A set of Kerr's combos without explanation made these bronze players who were still developing watch the black screen directly. In short, this matter can no longer be described as magical to them. It was simply outrageous that Grandma was hugging her and crying, she was dead. Therefore, director who could only quickly smooth things over and come down to appease everyone's emotions. They also joked that Min Dongmei's team had just arrived today and were not in good condition since they had no rest. They also said that Lu Xiaoqi had performed extremely well today. Finally, he comforted a few of his friends who were being beaten and said not to be discouraged. After all, you guys only seen Mang, wait until you arrive at Yuehui. Then it was Sunday, and they lost even more miserably. The last half of the sentence was what Lu Xiaoqi muttered in her heart. Today's training ends here. Everyone left the arena one after another. On the road, Xiao Yan and Lu Xiaoqi were walking side by side and suddenly said, "Ask you something. Zhao Xueqing, have you contacted her recently?" Lu Xiaoqi. "Sister Yan, do you think I should contact her?" Lu Xiaoqi glanced at Xiao Yan with her peripheral vision. Seeing that her expression was slightly serious and did not look like she was jealous, she said truthfully, "No. Her previous mobile phone number seems to have been changed." Xiao Yan rubbed her forehead, "No wonder." "What's the wonder? She also participated in this adventurer competition." "You don't know, right? Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 245. Lu Xiaoqi. Can Zhao Xueqing also participate in a world-class adventurer competition? How can it be? With her 2 brushes, she was worse than Lin Qingqing. How could she dare to participate in the competition? Xiao Yan looked at his expression of disbelief and explained lightly. It seems like her family is forcing her to get married. Both parties agreed to terms. If Zhao Xueqing's team cannot enter the top 3 in this competition, she will marry the second young master of the Wang family honestly. Nanny. Lu Xiaoqi was shocked and angry. Damn it, someone actually cares about my little wife? Give it to me. Xiao Yan saw the unpredictable expression on Lu Xiaoqi's face, and she understood in her heart. Sure enough, these 2 brats. Lu Xiaoqi seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, "Sister Yan, how did you know this news? I don't even have her contact information, how did you contact her?" Xiao Yan glanced at him. "You and Zhao Xueqing are the 2 most satisfactory students I have taught. Can I not pay attention to your news?" She paused and continued, "Your sister Dongmei's energy is beyond your imagination. I got all this information from her." Lu Xiaoqi suddenly understood. As a strong man at the peak of moonlight and an adventurer who has formed his own team, it is normal to have information channels that ordinary people don't know about. Otherwise, in this world where the strong only respects the strong, without the support of identity and background, and running around in the dark, you will only get bumped up, and it is impossible to develop. After confirming the source of the news, Lu Xiaoqi pondered for a moment and asked, "Sister Yan, do you have Zhao Xueqing's contact information? Why don't I scold this stinky girl? You didn't tell me if you changed your phone number, and you didn't ask me for help if you had a problem. Do you think you can get rid of me this way? You're laughing so hard, I've already accepted the betrothal gift, how can I still let your cooked white swan fly away?" Unexpectedly, Xiao Yan shook her head and glanced at him. "You don't even have her contact information, so where can I find her phone number?" "This is true. Inquiring about information is inquiring about information. If you can find out all other people's contact information, wouldn't this network be too awesome? It's like someone asking you how so and so is. If you're in a good mood, you might chat with him or her, but as soon as you come, you'll ask him what his phone number is, where he lives, what he likes. No matter how stupid people are, they will be defensive and won't tell you easily, except for naive and ignorant college interns. Luzioki nodded and stopped talking. If you don't know the contact information, it's not a big problem. We have to participate in this competition anyway, and we will meet sooner or later. What? Luzioki's face looked a little strange. I won't participate in the training. Director, whose expression was a little embarrassed, but he coughed and said helplessly, Student Lu, with the strength you have shown, even if you participate, the meaning of training has been lost. Besides, with you here, the four of them won't get very good training results. Got it? You guys are uniting to exclude me, right? Luzioki had a sad expression on her face and nodded heavily. Director, who was in a dilemma when he saw him like this. After all, they decided to let people participate in the competition, but in the middle of the training, they said they would not take others to play. But there is a sense of going back on one's word. But Luzioki had just beaten several seniors who were willing to train them one by one, only Xianuan was smart and was not beaten. Who is willing or able to train him? And you, Luzioki, are strong, but you can only represent you alone. So he came to the arena carrying peanuts, melon seeds, drinks, and potato chips. However, in order to express his reluctance and regret that he could not participate in the next training, Luzioki decided to visit everyone who was practicing hard. It can only serve as a trump card. Everyone can turn a blind eye to the following training, and you, Lu, can play whatever you want. Then this problem will become big. Lu Yun vs Lin Qing Qing, Zhang Li vs Li Leiban, Min Dongmei vs Lu Yang. It is even said that the focus is to show the students of each college. Zhang Yang and the others are receiving one-on-one guidance from Min Dongmei's team. After the efforts of a dean named Wang who did not want to disclose his real name, Taikyo University decided to cash in 50% of the participation reward previously promised to Luzioki and increase the purchase rights for some additional credits as compensation. The purpose of Taikyo University is obvious, which is to show the world its ability to cultivate adventurers, thereby attracting more talents to enter Taikyo University. Each one was hoisted up and hammered by his professional seniors. But the above requirement is to achieve excellent results and at the same time show the style of each college. As long as I have enough credits to enter the Holy Court dungeon, who the hell wants to play these kids' tricks with you? As a master of secret arts, he still has this basic amount of milk. If Taikyo University simply wanted to win the competition, then Luzioki's performance would have been sufficient. But this is obviously unfair to Luzioki. After all, the only one who is strong is you, Luzioki. Although you are indeed participating in the competition on behalf of Taikyo University's Academy of Secret Arts, you are only a freshman, a novice adventurer who has not been trained by Taikyo University. You don't even represent the Academy of Mystery. Although Xianuan said that he was not very good at the secret art of healing, not being good at it was one thing, not another. Such a happy decision. Zhang Yang suffered the worst, because Luzioki did not participate in this training, so his counterpart Xianuan, who majored in occult arts, assisted Xiao Yan, the weakest among the five, to train Zhang Yang, the most resistant among the four-person team. What a great feeling! Luzioki was overjoyed when she heard Director Hu's explanation. And Luzioki, if you are asked to lead the team to victory, no matter how outstanding your performance is, what does it have to do with Taikyo University? Sorry, there were too many things yesterday and today the update of chapter May 2nd not come out until the afternoon. I was secretly coding at the company. In other words, this means that 50% of the credits are paid in advance, and his authority is increased, allowing him to use the credits to purchase more props at the school. Unlimited refills. That is to say, Xiao Yan can beat her with peace of mind, and Xiaonuan can help with the buffs. If there is a problem with the attack, she can give you milk back in time. Try your best to train the other 4 team members and strive to make them make greater progress in a short period of time. So after Director Hu reported the progress and situation of the training to the leaders, everyone held a meeting to study it and decided to suspend Lu Xiaoqi's training first. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 246. When Lu Xiaoqi walked in with a large bag of snacks, except for Director Hu, who had already known about it in advance, everyone else looked a little surprised. You guys go on, I just want to take a walk. Lu Xiaoqi's expression was a bit mean, I just want to look at you. When Lu Yun saw this little bastard, the expression on his face was still a bit unnatural, and he couldn't help but snorted, and then the rotating crystal ball around him lit up. A series of attacks left Lin Qingqing in a state of embarrassment, moaning secretly. She was even more ruthless. Although Xiao Yan, Zhang Li and others were not affected at all, Zhang Yang and others were still distracted by Lu Xiaoqi's glaring gaze from the audience, and then received several severe blows. The most outrageous thing was that Lu Xiaoqi brought a chair from nowhere and lay on it. There was a small coffee table in front of him. Snacks were lined up on the coffee table. He was holding melon seeds in his hand and clicking cowling while looking at everyone with bright eyes. Although he said nothing, he seemed to have said everything. The excitement caused both parties to grit their teeth. This bastard. If you don't train yourself, you won't let others train you, right? Director Hu couldn't stand it any longer. He walked over silently and coughed. Before he could speak, Lu Xiaoqi said enthusiastically, Director, would you like to have something to eat too? With that said, a handful of melon seeds came into Director Hu's hands. Director Hu. Very warm and hospitable. He looked at the melon seeds in his hand and couldn't say the words he wanted to say to others. But this can't continue like this. Lu Xiaoqi can't be allowed to stay here any longer and affect everyone's training. Director Hu hesitated for a moment, then said, Student Lu, that's not what I meant. Oh, Lu Xiaoqi slapped her forehead, I understand. With that said, several bottles of drinks were stuffed into Director Hu's arms, so Director, you are thirsty. You didn't tell me earlier. Come and drink water. You can drink whatever you want. Director Hu subconsciously said, just white tea, thank you. Before he finished speaking, he was stunned. I'm not here to drink water. He was holding a melon seed drink and was embarrassed for a moment. This Lu Xiaoqi is simply poisonous. Why did my originally clear-minded self become confused inexplicably after getting close to him? Director Hu's face was as dark as water, thinking in his heart. Subconsciously, he put a melon seed in his hand into his mouth. Director Hu, click. Lu Xiaoqi, bah, bah, bah. Everyone on the stage. Unbearable. My uncle can bear it, but my aunt can't bear it anymore. Xiao Yan frowned, snorted, quit the battle with Zhang Yang, jumped off the ring, and walked towards Lu Xiaoqi menacingly. She put her hands on her hips and shouted, Lu Xiaoqi, what are you doing here? Lu Xiaoqi looked shocked, huh? Isn't this not good? Xiao Yan? Director Hu? What? Xiao Yan was confused by his reaction and asked subconsciously. It was boring. Lu Xiaoqi shook her head secretly and could only reply, nothing, I just came to visit everyone. Only then did Xiao Yan remember the business, her eyes widened, and she pointed at the puddle of fruits, snacks, and tea, is this what you call visiting everyone? You are obviously here to cause trouble. Luzioki looked innocent. There's no rule that you can't bring snacks when you come to visit. Xiaoyan was speechless for a moment and couldn't help but look at Director Hu aside. Look what I do. Director Hu subconsciously raised the white tea and took a sip. Then he realized something was wrong and quickly coughed and said, well, Mr. Liu, our training is a closed training. According to the regulations, others are not allowed to visit. But I'm not an outsider, I'm a contestant. Luzioki spread her hands, looking innocent. Director Hu. After saying these words, the whole person turned into a cold light and flew into the mirror floating nearby. At this time, Luzioki, who had resolved the resentment in her heart, happily logged into the campus website to check the credits she had received, and without hesitation exchanged them all for tickets to the Holy Academy dungeon. After finding the key to the problem, Director Hu finally had an idea for solving the problem. His mind suddenly became clear. He pulled Luzioki to the restroom and carefully comforted him. He also promised a lot of benefits and conveniences, and finally dismissed this little ancestor. Gone. This is not a problem with the way of cultivation, but rather a relaxation on the spiritual level. Wait for me. If only he were here. After a long time, Wu Ma opened the door and walked in. When she saw her young lady lying on the field, she couldn't help but look complicated and let out a long sigh. After the struggle, the woman stopped, her originally cold eyes softened a bit, glanced at Zhao Xueqing, nodded slightly and said, this time it's not bad. Humph, it must be that it's almost the same during training, so it's always a little bit worse at the critical moment. She pursed her lips, and a playful and smiling face always appeared in her mind. Looking at the cold woman, she shouted, come again. The woman who spoke was a stern-faced woman. She and Zhao Xueqing were almost modeled after each other, with frosty faces and cold eyes. When the two of them competed, she showed no mercy. His eyes gradually became sharper. It's almost, why is it always so close? It's really not about fishing. I worked overtime until early in the morning yesterday and didn't even time code the manuscript. I didn't get the rest I promised today, so I just coded a few words at work. Isn't that too much? Zhao Xueqing shook her head to disperse the thoughts in her mind. Hey, Zhao Xueqing's mana shield rose gradually, blocking the cold air. An ice dragon rose into the sky, and countless icicles fell like rain. Bah! Zhao Xueqing sat there panting, her body's potential was drained out, and she was almost unconscious. Director Hu. He finally understood that Luzioki was expressing her dissatisfaction to him in disguise. When Director Hu came out of the lounge, he saw a group of people surrounding the coffee table, eating food. The woman had a cold face and did not bring any weapons in her hands. With just a slight tap, an ice shield condensed and directly isolated Zhao Xueqing's attack. With a wave of her hand, the cold air turned into thousands of troops and rushed towards Zhao Xueqing. Zhao Xueqing held the staff with both hands, breathing heavily, dripping with sweat, and her eyes were almost soaked with sweat. She put the mirror into the parcel compartment with difficulty, took out the recovery potion and drank it. Regardless of her image, she lay down on the training field and fell asleep. Sister, I will recover your talent soon. Zhao Xueqing gritted her teeth and said nothing. Xiaoyan said confidently, what are you doing? It's half-time. His face darkened and he shouted, what are you doing? The next moment, there was a heavy frost, just like the freezing 12th lunar month. In fact, she practiced pretty hard, but ever since she met Luzioki, she developed a habit of relying on others, and her own practice naturally slowed down. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 247. Legend has it that there is a towering tree in the holy courtyard that has existed since ancient times. The tree is covered with a strange golden apple, and a strange dragon lives under the tree. This strange dragon is called Radon. It has hundreds of heads, so it never sleeps. It guards the golden apple tree day and night. It always makes a deafening sound when it moves because its 100 mouths can make 100 sounds. A different sound, very scary. Later, Radon was killed by a giant with the power to lift the sky, and the golden apple tree was chopped down by a magical axe that claimed to cut down no wood. So far, the golden apple has completely disappeared from the world. Luzioki couldn't help but curled her lips when she looked at the myths and legends recorded on the ancient inscriptions. You can pull him down, and return the 100-headed giant dragon Ladong, who cuts down every tree with his divine axe. If I hadn't read the guide in the academy, I would have believed your lies. Cricket is a difficult level dungeon. How many incredible bosses can you create for me? The guide to the Holy Academy given by Takeo University is very simple. The first step is to find the old man guarding the Holy Court and get the key to enter the Holy Court from him. Note that this old man cannot be killed here, so you need to do what he wants. The second step is to enter the Holy Courtyard, kill the ghosts and alienated plants lurking inside, and take the mission props from the pool in the center of the Holy Courtyard. The third step is to give the props to the old man, and then he will suddenly transform into a boss, with 3 stages, and each stage can be resurrected once. Finally, you successfully kill the old man. If everything goes well, he will drop a key. Use this key to open the treasure chest in the room, and you will have a great chance of obtaining the treasure. Including but not limited to, golden apples, equipment upgrade coupons, random skill books, purification balls, and other props. Look, what a simple and clear process. Who are you trying to scare with a 100-headed dragon and a divine axe? With Luzioki's perception ability, he quickly discovered the old guy guarding the Holy Courtyard. He opened his legs and rushed over without hesitation. The autumn wind was bleak, and in this golden forest, a white-haired old man in a robe slowly cleaned up the fallen leaves on the ground with a broom. When Luzioki saw this scene, she knew with her toes that there was something wrong with this guy. Who is so idle that it hurts to spend time outside sweeping fallen leaves on a windy autumn day? Isn't this a disease? I know you have a problem, but I don't say anything. Not only did I not tell you, I also tried to please you. Luzioki walked to the old man's side carelessly. The old man didn't even raise his head, and sighed leisurely. After so many years, there is finally someone. Before he could finish speaking, a pack of cigarettes was pressed against his mouth. Master, come to Hwazi. Luzioki smiled evilly and was full of enthusiasm. Elder. He frowned slightly, took a step back, waved his hand, shook his head and said, No, I don't need this, if you can. Before he could continue, Luzioki, who suddenly understood, took out a cigar and stuffed it into his hand. I understand. Master, smoke this, this is exciting. Come here and let me light it for you. Elder. Huh? Isn't that enough? Seeing that the old man didn't respond, Luzioki raised her eyebrows, nodded, and took out another bag of betel nut. Betel nut and smoke, the power is boundless. I understand you. Master. Or not. Oh, so you are so good. Here, have a glass of birdie vodka. Set fire to the forest is punishable by 3 years in prison, Luzioki muttered. This man is really not very particular. His face turned green and red, and he took a deep breath. As a result, he was filled with the smell of cigarette smoke. He suddenly felt dizzy. He quickly pulled off the cigar in his mouth and coughed repeatedly. After he left, the cigars, betel nut, vodka and dogskin hat all fell to the ground. Hey! You haven't put out the fire yet. Luzioki quickly stamped out the lit cigar. He stared at Luzioki with a gloomy look on his face. Luzioki's teasing made him so angry that the smoke he had just inhaled came out from his nose and ears at the same time. More than a quarter of an hour, you will be swallowed by the Holy Court. The keys that others obtained through the guide were for half an hour or 1 hour. Why did it become a quarter of an hour when I got it? 10 minutes later. The old man's face was ferocious, with veins popping out on his forehead. His original friendly appearance could not be maintained at all. He glared at Luzaoki, as if he was worried about something. In the end, he did not break his face. He just dropped a key and turned into a ghost. The shadow disappeared. He nodded with satisfaction and then asked, "Uncle, should you give me the key?" Luzaoki shook her head helplessly. "Hey, what a stingy uncle. Note that it only lasts for a quarter of an hour. Isn't this powerful?" Luzaoki's lips curled up slightly, "But for me, a quarter of an hour is more than enough." He looked at the complicated maze and sighed, "Damn it, can anyone tell me how to navigate this thing?" Luzaoki stared at the scene with wide eyes, and couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. "This six, uncle." "Old man, I'm your sister." The temperament came up immediately. "Damn it, why didn't anyone tell me that there would be a huge maze in this holy courtyard?" He had already tried to directly destroy the wall of the maze and go through it, but he didn't expect that this thing would repair itself. Luzaoki's face turned pale as she looked at the maze extending in all directions. Luzaoki had just broken the wall, and the next second it started to squirm crazily, repairing it at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although Luzaoki had quick eyesight and quick hands, he was able to pass through to the other side of the wall before it was repaired. However, after doing this several times, Luzaoki finally lost his way. In the blink of an eye, the confused old man had a cigar in his mouth, a pack of betel nut in his pocket, and a bottle of vodka in his hand. Pick up the key on the ground, and the message displayed on it will prompt. He was not worried about being trapped in the holy court when the time came, because he had an escape scroll and could escape from the dungeon at any time. However, this time the opportunity to conquer the dungeon was undoubtedly wasted. Luzaoki looked left and right and felt something was wrong. She tilted her head and thought for a while, then her eyes lit up and she took out a dogskin hat and put it on her uncle. "Are you deliberately making it more difficult for me? This is a key that can open the door to the holy court." "Old man, uncle, your sister. Turn over the table." "Old man, what a big sister. Sure enough, I am worthy of being the protagonist." Luzaoki said happily, "Look, what I said is right, right." Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 248. Although the maze extends in all directions, it is capped at the top and bottom and has walls on the left and right. People who enter can only choose one of the entrances to continue moving forward. Luzaoki's long sigh echoed in this twisting maze and spread far and wide. Just when he was about to give up the strategy and leave the dungeon, he suddenly heard a loud rumbling sound in the distance, as if something was approaching here. Luzaoki's eyes lit up, with a look of anticipation on her face. What he fears most now is that he won't encounter anything along the way. Even if he encounters some monsters, it is still much better than facing this empty maze. Boom! 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 As the loud sound approached, a huge monster appeared in front of Luzaoki. This is a bull-headed monster over 4 meters tall. Its body was naked, its muscles were knotted, its private parts were covered with long hair, its head had sharp horns, and its red eyes revealed a ferocious aura. The Minotaur walked up to Luzaoki, lowered his head and looked down at the thin and small human being, and his voice was like thunder. "Weak adventurer, I am the Minotaur. Answer me 3 questions and I will guide you in the right direction, otherwise you will become food in my mouth." "Feel sorry." Luzaoki raised her head slightly and rejected the other party's request with a look of helplessness. "I don't like talking to others while looking up." "Minotaur?" Its muscular brain couldn't understand what the tiny human meant. But the next second, he understood. Because a stunning sword light rose into the sky. The limbs quietly left home, blood flowed down, and the Minotaur's huge body collapsed to the ground. Luzaoki stepped on its body and looked down at this mythical man-eating monster. You can ask now. Oh, or tell me how to get out of the maze, and I can be merciful and spare your life. Minotaur. After 12 minutes, Luzaoki finally walked out of the maze and arrived at Haigulongdong's lair. In this dark environment, even though Luzaoki already had night vision, she still felt a sense of discomfort. The surrounding area was cold and damp, like an underground passage that never saw sunlight all year round. Luzaoki heard a rustling noise coming from one side and couldn't help but chase after him out of curiosity. After twists and turns, passing through the strange terrain covered with stalactites, Luzaoki finally came to a pool. This is the only place with a light source. There seems to be a long and narrow opening above the water pool, which sprinkles a faint light into the hole, reflecting the sparkling light in the water pool. He looked around, searching for the source of the previous noise. Just listen to crash. A woman's head broke through the water and surfaced. When Luzaoki saw it, she couldn't help but freeze on the spot. This is not to say how stunning or weird this woman looks, which even shocked Luzaoki. But in a physical sense, he was frozen in place. Because besides having a gorgeous appearance, the other party also has a jet black head that twists wantonly. Snake hair. This special meow is actually a Medusa. Luzaoki had seen this kind of monster in Mendongmei's cards before, so it was naturally not unfamiliar to him. It's just that the monsters recorded in Mendongmei's cards are just the same shape, without retaining some of the power of the original monsters. But this Medusa is different. Even though Luzaoki's resistance to abnormality was almost maxed out, he froze after being stared at by her. Because this is no longer a simple special effect, but the power of the law that comes with being cursed. It is indeed a legendary mythical monster. However, petrification did not appear on Luzaoki's body. It should be offset by Luzaoki's super high attributes. Medusa was also a little surprised when she saw this situation. Anyone who sees her eyes will fall into a state of petrification and eventually turn into a stone statue. If she stares at the opponent and actively uses this ability, the effect will be even more exaggerated, turning them into stone almost instantly. And this human being is the first being who has not been killed by her gaze. If the mission props are not found, the holy court will be closed. Thinking of this, his face turned livid and he almost couldn't help but draw his sword. If this is the case with Medusa. But just when his sword was only the last 10th and 1 centimeter away from Medusa's throat, he stopped. Luzaoki. He is not afraid of me being petrified. There is even a part of life that still retains the memory and sanity from before. I know that the monsters in this copy are actually beings that really existed in another world. There was only one thought in her mind. After seeing this look, he couldn't do anything anyway. Luzaoki. She couldn't help but gently pick up Luzaoki's head, and couldn't help but kiss it. 1.5 minutes to go. But after looking at the time, he held back. Medusa's eyebrows suddenly arched, she stuck out her slender tongue, and said in a sexy and hoarse voice, "Come with me, I will take you out. He is my destined son." Because Medusa showed no resistance to his behavior and just looked at him with a sad look. He was actually kissed by this guy just now? Luzaoki can move. Only then did Luzaoki realize that her tongue was like a snake, with a fork in the front. Wow, she broke through the water, and her slender snake body swam on the rocks. She approached Luzaoki curiously. Perhaps due to the stimulation, the mana trapped in his body accelerated and actually allowed him to break free. Especially now that he has learned part of the truth. He immediately took a few steps back and took out his dagger with his backhand, wishing he could split the monster that took advantage of him in half with one strike. I saw Luzaoki in this dim environment, extremely handsome, and her whole body seemed to be exuding a faint brilliance, Luzioki was using his magic power to resist Medusa's petrification power. You may not believe it. Why do you look so fat when you look at a scumbag? I was molested by a monster in the dungeon. Damn it, you obviously took advantage of me, right? When he strikes with the sword, does it count as killing innocent people indiscriminately? Luzioki had to admit it. After getting closer, in this dim environment, she finally saw the person's face clearly, and couldn't help but be slightly startled. Even Medusa's heart, which had been silent for many years and was colder than the knife used to kill fish in RT Mart for 10 years, suddenly started beating violently. Luzioki was silent for a moment, sheathed her sword slowly, and said coldly, "Tell me how to get out of here." You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Global copy, My Talent is Called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 249. See the light again. The strong light shone down, and Luzioki couldn't help but squint her eyes despite her physical condition. Medusa hid in a dark corner, staring at Luzioki dreamingly, seemingly reluctant to let go. Luzioki didn't know how to face this monster. In fact, if you look closely, she looks very beautiful, but her snake-tailed body and snake-haired head give people a sense of fear. If you ignore this, it's not like you can't rush. But Luzioki has no time to think about this problem now. Because there's not much time left for Joan, but there's not much time left for him. He transformed into the wind and rushed out without hesitation. Thousands of swords followed behind him, and no grass grew wherever he passed. Soon he found the so-called pool in the center of the holy courtyard. It is said to be a pool, but in fact the size of the pool is a bit ridiculously large. It's almost the size of an entire football field. What's more important is that the liquid inside doesn't seem to be ordinary H2O. The blue is deep and even has a bit of black. The mission prop that triggers the third stage is on the statue that is more than 10 meters high in the center of the pool. It was a statue of a pure white goddess. She held a staff in one hand and a shield in the other. Between her eyebrows, a golden gem shone. That gem should be the purpose of Luzioki's trip, the mission item that can lift the seal of the boss, the fragment of the godhead. Luzioki originally planned to rush over and grab the fragment of the godhead and run away, but as soon as his body passed the pool, his expression changed and he turned over and fell back to the edge of the pool. The moment he flew over, he felt that his ability to fly suddenly disappeared. This pool. Forbidden air. Luzioki's expression was unpredictable. He looked at the blue pool and said nothing. He silently took out a prop from the parcel column and threw it into the pool. Plop. There was not even a splash. The things Luzioki dropped fell into the pool and seemed to become part of the water, integrating perfectly into the pool. If Luzioki accidentally fell in just now, wouldn't it be? He gasped, never daring to act rashly. Although he has more than 100 lives, he only has one of many things on his body. If this strange pond water melts, wouldn't it be a loss of blood? But seeing that the time was coming soon, there was no extra time for him to think about it. He thought for a moment and swung his sword at the goddess statue in the distance. Brush, the sword energy did not touch the statue, and it fell into the pool as if it was pulled by some invisible force halfway through the flight. It seems that if you want to get the mission props, you have to go through this pool. Luzioki glanced around and suddenly his eyes lit up. A small boat fell into his eyes. Although this small boat looks inconspicuous, it is floating on the pool, with a hemp rope at one end tied to the noose on the edge of the pool. But what Luzioki saw in Eye of True Knowledge was 3 question marks. This canoe is undoubtedly a prop. And he looks very B-style. Luzioki walked over and took a closer look but was stunned. Although this boat is floating on the pool, it has no bottom. A bottomless wooden boat floats on the blue pool. This strange scene sent a chill down Luzioki's spine, and she couldn't help but mutter, "Isn't this special copy a difficult level copy? Why does it give people the feeling of having a nightmare? And why has no one ever mentioned such a weird way to pass the level before?" The customs clearance guide given by Takeo University talked about a lot of things, but it was completely different from what Luzioki encountered. Except for the goddess statue in the center of this pool. But now that time was running out, Luzioki had no intention of wondering what secrets were hidden in it. He doubtfully raised one foot and stepped into the bottomless boat. "Stand still." Luzioki's face lit up, and she quickly stepped into the boat to untie the noose on the edge of the pool. As soon as the rope was untied, Luzioki's expression changed. His energy and blood were rapidly declining in an unstoppable manner. It can be said to be 1,000 miles away. According to this posture, he will be drained alive by this weird boat before the time limit for opening the Holy Court expires. But Luzioki had no choice. If he cannot get the mission item on the forehead of the goddess statue, he will be trapped and die in the Holy Courtyard when it closes. So he gritted his teeth, and with surging mana flowing, the wooden boat turned into a sharp arrow and shot out, riding the wind and waves. Although there was only a pool the size of a football field, Luzioki traveled a long distance in a boat but still could not get close to the statue of the goddess. This feeling. It's like the world is so close. Luzioki's face was as sinking as water, knowing that there must be some rule to stop it. If this rule could not be broken, no matter how he urged the boat, it would be impossible to get close to the statue. But he really didn't have much time, and he didn't have time to study how to break this rule. But fortunately, he doesn't need to study it. Because the instigator behind it could no longer bear it any longer and emerged on his own. I saw the blue water suddenly bubbled up. A huge octopus tentacle burst out of the water and swept towards Luzioki on the boat. Luzioki had quick eyes and quick hands. He stood up and struck a sword. The cold sword energy turned the huge tentacle into powder. But before he could breathe a sigh of relief, one after another tentacles broke through the water and slapped him. "Knock. I'm not a magical girl. I don't like tentacle monsters." Luzioki muttered. "Wanjian returns to the clan get up." Endless sword energy spurted out again. Soon the tentacles, which were tens of meters high, were cut into pieces and fell into the pool. But although Luzioki's sword energy was powerful, it still couldn't see any trace of the pool water. No matter what kind of sword energy it was, as soon as it touched the blue water, it was immediately eroded and turned into water stains and fell into the water. Luzioki was shocked when she saw it, knowing that the water was stronger than Mr. Mighty, and he usually couldn't let it fall on him. The tentacles were chopped off, and the underwater monster seemed to be in a state of rage. Babble. A harsh sound wave came from underwater, the water in the pool exploded with huge potential, and a huge and ferocious head emerged. This monster head has a huge mouth parts, densely packed compound eyes all over the head, and the scarlet skin is covered with bumps. Ugly, hideous, evil. Eye of true knowledge. Kraken. The giant monster sleeping in the abyss, now he has been awakened. Hiss. Luzioki took a breath. I'll do it. Another monster that only exists in myths. Global copy, my talent is called Wind Spirit Moon Shadow. Author, Crying Boy Has Bad Luck. Chapter 250. Luzioki didn't hesitate much, Wanjian rose again. The colorful sword energy turned into clouds and rushed towards the roaring monster Kraken. The sword energy penetrated its body effortlessly, but did not have much impact on it. For its huge body, this sword energy is too small. Even a toothpick would lift it up. It doesn't feel good at all. Although the number of toothpicks is a bit too much, the monster's recovery ability should not be underestimated. On the whole, Luzioki is trying his best to scrape Kraken. Is this a difficult level copy? Playing with me? Luzioki cursed in her heart. With his strength, any adventurer at the moonlight level would have no choice but to give up. But during this stalemate, Luzioki's energy and blood were still dropping crazily. He gritted his teeth and took a gulp of the universal potion, recovering 50% of his status in seconds. Then he started frantically using Wanjiangazong to summon sword energy. Although due to the influence of the pool, sword energy continued to fall into the water, the overall scale could not stop spreading. Soon the colorful sword sea once again covered the sky above the pool. Snort. As long as I can summon it faster than Shen, no one can stop me from creating a sea of swords. As soon as the sea of swords appeared, the giant monster was beheaded. Countless sword energy turned into millstones, grinding the giant monster's body into pieces. Even Kraken felt pain now. It opened its huge mouthparts and let out a thundering roar. Countless tentacles appeared on the surface of the water again. These tentacles stood up to the sky, and the countless suckers on them opened, revealing their little mouths filled with fangs, and they were aimed at the wooden boat where Luzioki was. Oops! Luzioki's pupils shrank. Sure enough, his hunch was right. Countless blue water spurts out from Kraken's tentacles, heading straight for Luzioki. Luzioki! He summoned his sword energy back to defense without hesitation. The moment the spurting water touched the sword energy, it melted and turned into liquid and fell into the pool. Countless rapids broke through the layers of defense of the sword energy, and effortlessly approached Luzioki on the wooden boat. Luzioki was about to become part of the pool under this overwhelming attack. A strange roar came from the shore. Kaka! The rapids solidified and turned into stones that hit the sword energy again and turned into debris and fell into the water. The giant monster Kraken, who is showing his teeth and claws, is no exception. His body solidified and began to condense from bottom to top, turning into a stone statue. Luzioki, who survived this disaster without any danger, let out a long breath. Looking back towards the shore, a graceful figure stood there quietly, looking at him quietly in the pool. Who could it be if it wasn't Medusa? Luzioki's expression was a little complicated, but she finally opened her mouth, and her weak voice floated far away with the pure magic power and reached Medusa's ears. Thanks. When Medusa heard Luzioki's words, a bright smile appeared on her delicate face, and her snake hair twisted excitedly. Luzioki waved her hand, turned around and continued to rush towards the stone statue. Sure enough, after the giant demon was petrified, the inexplicable restriction disappeared. Luzioki managed to get close to the stone statue without any effort, and with a slight jump, he took off the fragment of the divine head on the goddess's forehead. Everything in the holy court was frozen, and a breeze blew by. The surrounding scenes instantly shattered and turned into stars and scattered. Sure enough, as the guide said, as long as the mission props are obtained, the holy court will disappear. It's over. Luzioki took a long breath and looked down at the golden gem in her hand. Luzioki's eyes changed. What happened to this mission item? Why is it different from what he knows? Broken Godhead dash. Whoever holds it will be cursed by the gods. It seems to be sealing something. Dash. 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 5 attributes. Luzioki screamed in her heart, get out of here. Are you saying that this thing is a mission prop? What family? 5 entries of mission props? So far, Luzioki has only seen one prop with more entries than this thing. That is 5-colored divine stone. Want to know what the 5 terms mean? What a mythical prop. A broken prop, mythical level, and a mission prop. What kind of mission is this? It's so awkward. Wrong. The guide clearly says fragments of Godhead. Why did it turn into broken Godhead when it came to him? Luzioki thought about the only 2 visible entries of this prop, and felt like she was caught in some huge conspiracy. What does it mean that those who hold it must suffer the curse of the gods? What does it mean that something seems to be sealed? Is this something that I, a young monk at the golden core level, can understand? Give it to me. A gloomy voice came from behind Luzaoki. Luzaoki was startled, and when she looked back, the old man in robes had appeared behind Luzaoki at some point, looking at him with a cold face. Luzaoki subconsciously took 2 steps back, and then realized something was wrong. She stuffed the broken godhead into her parcel with her backhand, pretending to be stupid, and said, "Master, what did you say? Why can't I understand? Stop pretending to me, hand it over." The old man's face became ferocious, his eyes fixed on Luzaoki, and his murderous intent was evident. "What exactly do you want? If you want, you should make it clear. If you don't tell me clearly, how will I know you?" Luzaoki was still using Boss Tang's thoughts, but the old man couldn't stand it anymore and rushed towards Luzaoki with a roar. Luzaoki had already been prepared and turned sideways to avoid his attack. She originally wanted to kick the old man on the buttocks and give him a butt back, flat sand and falling goose style. As a result, when I stepped on it, it felt like I was stepping on a phantom, with no strength left. Luzaoki was startled, and quickly stopped her strength and stood firm. The old man turned around slowly, and his whole body began to exude a rich black energy. His face gradually became distorted and terrifying, and a villain's unique laughter came out from his mouth. "GGG. It's useless, you can't hurt me. If you say it can't be hurt, it can't be hurt? How shameless I am." Luzaoki didn't believe what he said at all, so she flew over with sword energy in her backhand. As a result, it passed through the old man's body. What a meow, another divine power. Luzaoki was a little confused, but faced with the final boss described in this guide, he did not dare to be careless at all, and shouted to summon 10,000 swords to Gazong. Countless sword energy surged out again, surrounding Luzaoki. The old man remained motionless, just looking at Luzaoki quietly, slowly opening his mouth and saying, "Hand it over, and I will spare your life." Ahem, cool guys, it's 250 manual dog head.